Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily with Ray Flowers, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to use the promo code FSD20 for a 20% discount on the products over at fantasyguru.com. Hey there, I'm Ray Flowers of fantasyguru.com. Thanks for spending the next hour or so with me, as hopefully you do every day, Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And remember, the show is always on podcast form at fantasyguru.com. Click the Elite Plus tab, type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your local podcast network. You can find it there. You can watch the show live on YouTube. You can watch the show live on Facebook. You can watch the show live on Twitter X if you watch along at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. Otherwise, catch it on demand. That's what we have all the sources for. Obviously, if you're not listening live, you can ask questions. If you ask those questions, leave those comments. We'll get to them at the end of the show today, as we always do. But we encourage you to tell a friend, share the story. We talked about this yesterday on the show, a good deal. Really appreciate all the interactions from all of you, helping us to grow what has been, I think, a really fun thing. We're at show 143 today. It's pretty good. It's about five. Well, it's more than 5 months because we take Saturdays and Sundays off. But you get the point. We got a pretty good run here going. I really enjoyed doing it, and hopefully you enjoy watching it every single day, Monday through Friday. You can also listen to us as a group over at fantasyguru.com. Last night, Justin Fensterman and myself were on the Elite Sports Game Time show. That's Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 Eastern on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. We did a schedule release for the NFL. So if you didn't get an NFL fix, if you missed it, if you didn't want to watch ESPN and watch everyone talk about Patrick Mahomes for 3 hours, check us out on demand on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, the Elite Sports Game Time show. Last night, Justin Fensterman and I spent about 75-80% of the show, maybe more, talking about the schedule release, some of the quirks of it, Netflix games on Christmas Day. That's on a Wednesday. Yeah, 5 games playing in foreign countries, 9 playoff matchups rekindled as the league is running it back from last season. So check that out on demand. There's also the Elite Sports Game Time show, which is Monday through Friday with Jeff Mans from 3 to 6 Eastern. Wednesdays, I'm on with Jeff, so I was on with Jeff yesterday for 3 hours. And we also talked about the NFL playing on Christmas Day and how that's not the best thing I've ever heard of. Jeff had some strong opinions on that. We did our top 5. We talked about the core 4. I'll be writing the cash game breakdown later today. Went through teams, positions, running backs, all that kind of stuff. So check that out again, Monday through Friday on SiriusXM. All righty. What can we do here for you? We can do a lot for you here. Let's start out with one note. Sale. VIP Platinum Package still going for as far as I know right now. Use the promo code 50 special. 50 special. They get you a 50% discount on everything. And I don't need to, I usually say, it gets you Discord, it gets you articles, it gets you chat rooms. It's everything. Whether it's seasonal, wagering, or DFS. Everything. Whatever we do. If there is something that we haven't done yet, that in 2 months we debut out of nowhere, we decide to cover camel race. You get it if you get the VIP Platinum Package because you get everything we do. Use the promo code 50 special. VIP Platinum membership gets you everything we do at fantasyguru.com. Click the subscribe now tab in the top right corner, and that'll send you off on a journey of wonder with us in the world of fantasy sports. All right, today, what are we doing here? We're doing some baseball talk, and we're going to be heavily focused on pitching today. A couple people asked in Discord. There's been a couple of performances that were worthy of note in the last 24 hours, so we'll talk a lot about pitching. Javier, Assad, Ranger, Suarez, Bryan, Woo, John Gray, Taj Bradley, Framber, Valdez, Brandon Pfaadt, health updates on Joe Musgrove and Max Scherzer. We'll talk about a couple of hitters, Trey Turner and Sean Murphy, but most of it will be focused on pitching. Why so little in terms of the players? Well, maybe we'll need more players. Maybe I'll talk fast and have nothing to say, and we'll have to add some extras here last minute. But we're scheduled to be joined with Armando Marsal in about 25-30 minutes. Armando's on today. We're going to talk a little bit about the NFL schedule, but we'll also talk a lot about the players in the news. It's that time. We got guys signing contracts like Jared Goff. We've got the Raiders saying there's an open competition at the quarterback position. We don't know who's starting for the Vikings in week 1 in terms of quarterback play. Is Jahmyr Gibbs going to take over the Lions backfield? We'll talk about that with Armando Marsal here again about a half hour or so. All right, let's get into it here. Javier Assad, 6 scoreless innings for the Cubs against the Braves. Struck out 7, allowed 4 hits, and just 1 walk earning the win. And someone said, look, I benched Assad because of the matchup with the Braves. And I'll say it this way, and I've said it this way many times, but I haven't said it recently here on this show at least. The worst about, injuries are the worst thing, okay. But the worst thing that can happen to your team on the field, the absolute worst thing that can happen, is a catastrophic pitching performance. Okay? The old 8 runs and 2 inning thing. It's the worst thing that can happen. If you're in a head-to-head setup, it kills you for the week. If you're in a roto setup, you need to now have your relievers throw 20, shutout innings to break even here. It's rough. Okay? So when in doubt with the pitcher and going into Atlanta to face the Braves with the lineup that's starting to hit a little bit more, yeah, I'm not against saying I sat Assad, and don't beat yourself up for that. Now, again, he did throw a quality start. And remember the time before that against the Pirates, only lasted 4 1/3 innings. Time before that was a quality start against Milwaukee. Then we got 5 innings, 5 innings, 5 innings. The real issue with Assad is until 2 of his last 3 games, he'd only had 1 other 6-inning outing in his first 6 efforts. So he was basically going 5 innings, not really beating himself with the walk, not really giving up a ton of hard contact. And here we are through 9 starts, and he's given up 9 runs, and this looks spectacular. Let's break him down in a little bit more detail. We've done this previously. Let's do it again here. And again, I'll also write about guys over at fantasyguru.com. And when I write about guys, I'm able to pull up graphs and charts and all that. I don't have the time, if I'm being quite honest with you. I don't have the time to do it here with the show. For those people that don't realize, 11 a.m. Eastern is 8 a.m. in the morning for me, which means I get up at 6:45 in the morning and start putting this thing together, catching up with everything. I work until after 7 o'clock, so I'm working over 12 hours a day. I just don't have time to do the graphics and stuff I'd love to do. I wish I had a producer here. The show would be a lot cooler to look at if we had a producer, but we don't have one. So when I write the articles, I'm more capable of saying, well, let's plot his fastball and look at it per start, or let's talk about his release point. Or I'm more able to visually break those things down, obviously, than I am here. So we do more broad strokes here on the show. Plus, let's be honest. Gotta be honest with you all. This is free. You don't get the whole kit and caboodle for free. If you want the kit and caboodle, you got to sign up for the package over at fantasyguru.com. By the way, if you sign up right now for DFS baseball or wagering baseball, if you sign up for either one of those 2 packages, you get the rest of the hockey season for free. You get the rest of the basketball season for free. You get PGA, MMA, soccer, and racing as well. We give that to you for free. So check that out over at the all-in package, which is basically everything but football tossed in if you buy the wagering baseball package or the DFS baseball package. Back to Javier Assad. Javier Assad has a walk rate right now about 8%, basically league average. That's totally works. Now, the problem for Assad is the strikeout rate's below league average. He's got a 22% strikeout rate. So he's not a big strikeout guy. His CSW is 25%. His swinging strike rate is 6%, which is terrible. You can create a scenario, and his O-swing, the amount of pitches he gets swung at outside the strike zone, is 28%. The bottom line is this is as good as it's going to get in the strikeout column for Javier Assad, and likely we're going to see even some pullback from where we're at right now. So Javier Assad has numbers that compare, and I always throw this guy's name out even though he's walking more guys than that this year. I always thought the name Marcus Stroman. That's the kind of zone we're in with Javier Assad. Now, the difference between Assad and Stroman is Stroman has a 55-60% ground ball rate, and Assad's at 45%. That's significant. So Assad is someone that does not profile as much better than league average in the walk column. We can live with, but way below the league average in the strikeout column, kind of dicey. He gets a solid ground ball rate, but not a high enough ground ball rate that I'm, overly impressed by it. His 4% home run to fly ball ratio is laughably low. It's about a third of the league average. That number is going to go way up, way up. It's going to triple probably, to be honest. At least it'll double and a half. It'll go up 250%. It'll probably go up 300%. So we're going to see a significant uptick in the home runs. His 246 batting average of balls in play is very low for a guy that has a 45% ground ball rate. That number is going to go up to 275, something like that, maybe even higher. His 87% left on base percentage rate is not possible over a full season. Does not. No one does that. It doesn't happen. So you start chipping away at this, and his 1.5 ERA, his expected ERA is double that. His SIERA and his xFIP, and this is the scary part, and SIERA and xFIP do a much better job of saying how the pitcher is performing by focusing what the pitcher can control, right? XFIP's big thing is it normalizes for home runs. We talked about the fact that he's been very fortunate with home runs. XFIP throws a league average home run rate in there. Sierra is more directly focused on what the pitcher can control than ERA, which has got a lot of white noise. Sierra is 3.95. His whip is XFIP is 3.91. Okay. His raw ERA right now is 1.5. So both those measures are saying, yeah, significant fortune is part of this right now. Would not beat myself up for not pitching Assad yesterday. At this point in time, I think you could consider trading Assad. He's 4-0 with a 1.5 ERA. Maybe someone would bonkers overpay. Maybe they wouldn't because they're analyzing things. I'm not saying that Assad is going to fall off the map at all. I think the odds of him having a 3.9 ERA versus a 1.5 ERA are astronomically high the rest of the way. I think that, if you look at it, and here's the thing. He's made 9 starts. Let's say he makes 29 starts. He's made 9 starts with an ERA of 1.5. He could make, 18 starts the rest of the way with a 3.9 ERA. And his ERA is still going to be 2.9 this year or whatever. I'm making that up because I don't have the numbers. But you know what I'm saying? He still could have a great season, even if he's, quote unquote, that pitcher the rest of the way. So bottom line is that the whip and the ERA are unsustainable, and it's not even close. So as long as you're okay with holding him and understanding the limitations, totally fine with that. I would potentially look to trade him, but again, you never know what that's going to bring. And I'd also point out he threw 120 innings last year. The year before that, he was at about 140 innings. So we got a little bit of run here. He could hit 150 innings, which is not something we normally say with guys. Touch and feel. Ultimately, not the skill set I love, but in this day and age, we need consistency, and he's at least bringing that for now. Ranger Suarez got the win last night, and Ranger Suarez has been even better than Assad. And I don't think Assad or Suarez were drafted in most leagues. You could have picked them both up, and your pitching staff right now is banging. And you're thinking to yourself, like, hey, man, I got these injuries I'm dealing with, but I got these 2 dudes. They're carrying the bacon, carrying lunch. You know what I'm trying to say. Through 9 starts, he's 8-0 with a 1.4 ERA and a 0.76 whip. This is phenomenal stuff from Ranger Suarez. Now let's be real about Ranger Suarez. Can we do that? Okay, let's be real. Ranger Suarez, even last night, when he had that success, 5 shutout innings against the Mets. Only struck out 3 guys, and most concerning for him, because he's like Assad, is not striking guys out. 16 of the 33 batters he faced, he fell behind. His first pitch strike rate last night, despite the solid effort of no earned runs, he gave up 2 runs total. Despite the solid effort last night, his first pitch strike rate was under 50%. Okay. I'm here to tell you 100%. It is impossible for him to have a first pitch strike rate under 50% and to be overly effective. It's certainly not possible for him to do that and be this effective. I mean, you would think he's got a 75% first pitch strike rate with the way this is going. If you look at the number for the season, it's only 64%, which would be a career best for him. But the league average is about 61%. He's not getting ahead 0-1 at an extremely high level. What he has done is he's got the highest O swing of his career. It's 36%, which is 6% higher than Assad. So he's getting a little bit more chase. His swinging strike rate's 10%, very number, but way better than Assad's number. His CSW is 28%, 28.5%, 3% better than Assad. So these numbers grade out a little bit better than Assad. There's also the batted ball profile. His ground ball rate, Suarez, for his career is 54%, and this year it's 57%. Remember, it was 45.6% with Assad. The bottom line is when you look at these 2 guys, if we're comparing them directly, Suarez has a better overall skill set. Now, does he have this skill set? Oh, absolutely not. 215 batting average of balls in play for a guy who's at 295 for his career. Very, very reasonable. Obviously, that number is going to go up. Got the same left on base percentage of 87%. He's already the owner of a 76% career mark, which is really good. Anything over 75% is really good. Like really good. It's all-star level. It's at 87%. Not possible. His strikeout rate is high enough right now, if he is able to maintain it, that he's got more lasting goodness than Assad. Can he hold on to a 27% strikeout rate? he's not that guy. It's 22% for his career. Yeah. He's always been right around the league average walk rate. 8% is his career mark. This year it's 4.6%. Yeah. You look at the batted ball data, no one has been able to square the ball up. 84 mile an hour exit velocity, 4.7% barrel rate, 28% hard hit rate. He's pitching very well. I'd rather have him than Assad, but we have to be realistic. I don't think he maintains a strikeout an inning. I am concerned about the fact that his numbers are so unbelievably good that when the regression comes, we talk about this a lot. Is it a slow fade or is it a fast boom, boom, boom? Meaning, does he go out and give up, 12 runs in 3 starts in, 11 innings? I have been very impressed by what I've seen with him. He has had other stretches of time where he's been extremely effective. He's dealt with some injuries. He's also been just a guy. He's pitching very, very well. His pitch dispersal chart is very similar. He has not changed his pitch mix up substantially compared to last year. He's in a great groove. A little bit more of a lasting Ranger Suarez love fest than Javier Assad, as we're talking about here. But again, this start is what are the odds that someone has a season like this? Right? Tiny. What are the odds someone has a season like this when they own this skill set? Tinier. He's basically Marcus Stroman. Basically. He's just pitching out of his mind right now. Bryan Woo, my breakout pitcher of the year, for those people that didn't know that. And then, of course, after he was called the breakout pitcher of the year, he gets hurt. Then he returns to action. Then he has this whole weird thing. He finally comes back to the Mariners. The results are solid, but his forearm was stiff. And there's a whole... as we talked about here on the show and in Discord and articles, I don't know what the hell that was about. If you can't sit there for 25 minutes without your arm being stiff, there's a problem, okay? Which is why we talked a lot about caution heading into the effort last night against the Royals. Last night against the Royals, he gave up 1 run in 5 1/3 innings, struck out 5 guys, and looked good. And if you go a little bit deeper, he only allowed 3 hits, only walked a single guy. This is all really good stuff. Sacrifice fly in the 6th inning. He went 5 innings without giving up a run. He had 13 swings and misses on 79 pitches. His fastball was at 95 miles an hour. He had a CSW of 29%. We were just talking about that. All of this is good. He faces the Yankees next time out, which is not a good matchup. Soto and Judge, obviously, in particular, especially with Judge improving and really finding his stroke here of late. That's a very difficult matchup. I would still be hesitant to start him because of the matchup in that outing. But what we saw last night was indicative of the guy that I profiled in the preseason as my breakout pitcher of the year. I still have that level of trepidation with him. What does that mean? Well, that means if someone else has him on the roster and now you want to go make a trade for him, you blew it. You should have done that when he got hurt. You should have done that 2 weeks ago. It's too late to do that. If he's on your roster, we're holding on tight and hoping he can keep healthy because we're seeing why he was my breakout pitcher of the year. If he's on the waiver wire, I'm adding him. Again, I don't have to start him against the Yankees, but I'm adding him. And again, if you've been listening to this show or reading articles, you should have added him before the effort last night, which is going to get people excited. If someone dropped him, and I said this to people in Discord, it's like, look, I don't want to drop Woo, but if you've got 5 other guys in the top 55, 60, which there's a question like that yesterday in the rankings over fantasy group, I'm like, well, you got to drop Woo. I also told people, look, if I could, I would keep Woo on the injured list, let him make that start yesterday, and then we'll decide today what to do. Well, now we have our decision. Our decision is we're holding on to Woo, we're riding that train, and we're hoping his arm stays healthy. Love the skills. You can check out the Breakout Pitcher of the Year article over at the site for a long, thousands and thousands of words, a breakdown of him and some of the other guys that I thought would potentially break out this year. We'll see. Let's see if Bryan Woo can make 20 starts and have him be dynamite. Fingers crossed. John Gray threw 6 1/3 shutout innings in a win over the Guardians. He's got a 2.1 ERA and a 1.17 whip, and he's got to strike out an inning. And John Gray, it's one of those scenarios with John Gray where he's been around for a long time. We always talked about his stuff and said, look, he pitches for the Rockies. If he could ever get out of Colorado, maybe, because he would have those moments of time where he'd be solid and then he'd get hurt and goes to the Rangers, and he's pretty damn solid in 2022. Last year, he's league average. He comes into this season at 32 years of age. No one cares. And here he goes again, pitching well. And, we know with John Gray that he's going to be in the rotation, unlike a lot of the young guys. He's going to be in the rotation as long as he's healthy. That's a plus. When looking at his numbers, we see a ground ball to fly ball ratio of 1.2, league average. That number is basically a mirror of what we saw last season. Both those numbers well below his career average. He is still got a 45% ground ball rate, which is right on his career mark. He, too, like Assad, has got a 3.6 home run to fly ball ratio. And you can talk about the guy's ability to keep the ball down, locate, miss the barrel, all those kind of things. His career number is 14%, and it's 4 right now. Home run to fly ball ratio, there's some debate over how much control a pitcher has there, but we all agree it's this. It's a little bit. Okay, it's not a lot. Okay, you can't fight that devil forever and win. So the home run rate is going up for John Gray. And I think when you look at his effort in total, I think you can say this is looking an awful lot like the guy from 2022 and not 2023. That makes him a streaming option. Not a guy. I still can't get confident in him because it's been a decade. I just can't get confident in him. But he makes him a streaming option. And one has to figure that the Rangers offense starts to get going too as a whole. They really haven't gelled yet, and that'll give them some of the extra run support. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I kind of like John Gray at the moment. Again, I'm not a fan of him, and I'm not trading to add John Gray, but if he's on the waiver wire in your setup, okay, John Gray. Taj Bradley, someone asked about him in the Discord this morning, and I linked to my player profile for him. I linked to the breakout article of the year with Taj Bradley. We've talked about him here on the show, especially after he was getting close to being recalled, and then after his first outing. He was able to strike out 6 guys, give up 2 runs, 4 hits, and a walk yesterday. He has really good stuff. The Rays know how to have success on the hill with guys that have lesser stuff, right? The Zach Littles of the world. Bradley, if he can stay healthy, has really got a chance here because his fastball is something. Yesterday, he was throwing the splitter, had a lot of success doing that. He could make 2 starts next week. He might face the Red Sox again if he stays on schedule, and then potentially the Royals. So Taj Bradley, if he is on the waiver wire, go now. You should have gone already, but go now and get him if he's still on the waiver wire, especially for that 2-step potentially next week. Bradley is very intriguing. He has to show the ability to take the ball every 5 days, which I think he can do. He's one of the few young arms that came into this season without overt concerns about workload because he'd been building that up in his minor league career. He has to show the ability to do it at the big league level, but also to have his secondary pitches match the fastball potential. It's been a couple outings. That's far it's happened. So I love Taj Bradley. And again, it was talked about in Discord. I think I expressed that all preseason too, and I'll restate it here. If Bradley is on the waiver wire, that is a mistake. Go get Taj Bradley. Framber Valdez tossed 7 scoreless innings. He had 8 strikeouts. It's the Athletics. The Athletics have been better of late, but it's the A's. It's great to see Framber Valdez do that because Valdez has been uneven. Now, it's so funny to say that. His ERA is 2.97 and his whip is 1.21. He's been uneven. He has been uneven. There was an injury involved we got nervous about there. I think in the case of Valdez, like in opposition to John Gray, I have uber confidence in Framber Valdez. Like the only thing I'm worried about right now is his arm going to hold up after that hiccup he had with it. Like that's it. Framber Valdez is going to take the ball every 5 games or 6 if the Astros go with the 6-man. He'll give you 6 innings every time out. He'll give you a quality start every time out. He'll give you 5 or 6 strikeouts in the 6 innings every time out. That's just who he is. He keeps the ball down. He throws everything, the changeup, he throws everything down, and there it is. He faces the Angels next time out. He could have a 2-step next week as well. The Angels are not a good offense. Framber Valdez is in a pretty good spot to continue the success he showed last night. Brandon Pfaadt had 9 strikeouts and allowed 1 run against the Reds last night in a very good effort. He's got 51 strikeouts in 54 innings, and that's about the strikeout level. About 1 an inning makes sense. He was also in the breakout pitcher of the year article. That's about where we expect him to be. The intriguing and interesting and positive thing is he's walked 10 guys in 9 starts. That's, we talk about this a lot on the show. Let's be very simple. Strikeouts, walks, grounders, or at least strikeouts and walks. This is a really good start for Brandon Pfaadt in the walk column. And he threw, like we were talking earlier about getting ahead of the count and everything like that. He threw 61 of 93 pitches for strikes. So his, strike rate was 65%. Pretty good. Pfaadt has struggled a bit from start to start with consistency and locating his pitches. He's got some splits. How is this? I haven't looked recently. Let's pull it up as we're talking. He's got some splits that to date have been a little troubling in terms of the lefty-righty thing. Okay, we've started to normalize a little bit here. Last year, the 365 WOBA against lefties with a 22% strikeout rate. Yeah, the strikeout rate's fine. The WOBA's bad, right? WOBA 315-20 is the league average. Not good. As an example, his home run per 9 last year against lefties was 2.2. Ooh, double what we want to see. This year, the WOBA's down to 339. Still not a good number. The home run per 9 is way down to 1.04. We can live with that. But he's matched last year's strikeout minus walk ratio of 13.8%. That's completely league average. If he can be league average against lefties, it's gonna work. There's still some work to do there, but at least he's made improvements this year because that was one of the big concerns coming in is how is he going to offset lefties, which he had not been able to do successfully at the big league level prior. Let's talk about a couple of health guys before we visit with Armando Marsal here in a few minutes to talk some football. Max Scherzer was transitioned from the regular injured list to the 60-day injured list. Practically speaking, that still allows him to return in a couple of weeks, so it doesn't change the dynamic of what we're dealing with here. I got really excited about Max Scherzer, about 2 weeks ago before this thumb issue popped up. And here's what we're dealing with. He had an MRI on his tricep, elbow, and neck. Ooh. You normally have one part, the whole. Oof. Why? Because he's got the thumb issue. I guess it's a nerve thing. That's what they've determined. There's nothing structurally wrong. Sigh of relief. But he's a guy who's 40 years old who's got a nerve issue. Yeah. There's no clear return date at this point. They have slowed everything down. He's supposed to start playing catch again. So hopefully he can ramp things back up. But this very timeline, July, then June, then May, we're back in June now if everything goes right. If it doesn't go right, maybe it gets pushed back further. So as we've discussed, I've laid the whole timeline out. Next week. Shoot. I'll just say shoot with Max Scherzer. Now, again, if he pitches in the second half, he costs $2, $1 in auctions. He was a 25th round pick. It's fine if he pitches half the season and is effective. Totally fine. But that little boost we were hoping to get with the extra 5 to 10 starts that it sounded like we were possibly going to get, we're not going to get at this point with Max Scherzer. Joe Musgrove was dealing with the tricep issue. Hopes to return Sunday against the Braves. I will say it now, as I often do. Anytime a guy is coming back from the injured list, I'm always reluctant to pitch them in their first time out. I would be reluctant to pitch someone against the Braves in Atlanta, as we talked about with Javier Assad. Given the unevenness, of Musgrove to date, I'd be very concerned with using him in that first time out. He's alternated good performances with poor performances. Sometimes he has shown up and his stuff has not been good. He's allowed 7 home runs his last 3 outings. I can't start him in this next time back, or his first time back from the tricep issue. But the good news is he is trending toward a return. The last time out, he threw a quality start, had 9 strikeouts and no walks, which made the timing of the tricep issue so difficult because it's like he finally, it was his first good game in a month, really. And we're kind of back at square one with him. But he's got the track record. He's got the history. He's got the ability to, I think, work around some of the struggles, the outright struggles he might have that he was having. If his stuff is down a little bit, we talked a lot about the home run to fly ball ratio and everything today. The last 3 years, it's 12%. This year, it's 23%. So this has gone in the opposite direction. You can struggle. You can leave pitches up. You can 23% home run to fly ball ratio. Come on, man. That's just not going to happen. So we'll see some regression there. He's got a 4.3 xFIP, which again normalizes for the home runs. 4.3. His actual ERA is 6.4. So let's split the. I was going to say split the difference. His ERA is not 5, but he's a league average guy right now, not a 6.4 ERA guy. But there's work to do. He'll try to take that first step this weekend against the Braves. A couple more hitters to talk about before we move on to some football. First of all, we've got Trey Turner, who is taking ground balls and did some agility training on the field Wednesday. Now, this is great news. He's out with the hamstring issue. It didn't look like when it happened, it was overly serious. He wasn't, carried off the field or crying or anything. It wasn't like that. He himself said, I'm thinking 6 weeks, something like that. We're way ahead of that because, again, he's taking ground balls and doing some agility work. This is a first step. There's many steps that need to be crossed. He coming back, not running would severely impact his overall value. So you don't want him to rush him back to the field and just say, go be Reese Hoskins and not run. We talked about his hamstring issue yesterday. But it appears that he's making quicker recovery than thought. 6 weeks is a long time, right? And we don't want him coming back early and having it be an issue that pops back up again. But if that 6 week time frame can even be 3 or 4, we've got to consider that a win. It seems like, without any definitive information, it seems like that is at least possible right now, which got to make you feel a little bit good if you have Trey Turner on your team. Sean Murphy's got an oblique issue. He's expected to begin a minor league rehab assignment next week. I mean, this has been, 6 weeks already? It has gone longer than anticipated / hoped for. They probably gave him a little bit more time because they have Travis d'Arnaud, who's a very solid backup catcher. He had 14 home runs and 6 at-bats in that 1 week, whatever the hell it was. That gave them a little bit more breathing room too. So they've been very cautious with Murphy. That's good news in the sense that he shouldn't have a setback. We obviously now have to deal with when is the return going to be. If he does return to a minor league rehab stint next week, he's been shut down for about 6 weeks here. He's probably going to need, and teams rush this, in my opinion, all the time. They finally get to the end, right? Let's get the guy on the field. Let's get him some work, bring him back to the bigs, and they give him 4 games. We'll see. I think there is a scenario where he is about 10 to 14 days away from the big leagues right now. We'll see if that timeline is accurate once it all plays out, but that's reasonable. He might even return next weekend. It could be back in 9 days. So maybe I should have said 7 to 14 days, something like that. So in about 2 weeks, I think it's fair to consider that you'll be starting Sean Murphy in your fantasy leagues once again. I'm Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. You can find my work over there, obviously, at FG. You can find me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, as we talked about at the top. You can find me on Threads, on Twitter X, on Instagram at The Ray Flowers. You can find this show on YouTube at youtube.com/@ElisePlusNetwork. And our next guest is someone who you can find all over the place. You can find him on our show on SiriusXM. You can find him here on Fantasy Sports Daily. You can find him over at FantasyGuru.com. He also has a podcast, which if you go to FantasyGuru.com, go to the top, go to the Elite Plus tab. That's where you can find this show cataloged, but you can also find his show catalog. That one's called Mind of Marsal. It's Armando Marsal joining us today to talk little gridiron with us. Armando, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, Ray. Excited to be on and talking some football with you, man. It's becoming a tradition now, and we're going to be doing more often. So I am looking forward to it. It's a fun time of year. Football is slow, but there's always something to talk about, right? So excited to break some things down here with you today.
Yeah, we haven't officially done this, but I hinted at it the other day, and Armando's talking about it's likely that starting in June, we'll have Tyler, Russell, and Armando on each week. So each of them will stop by for like a 20-minute visit. That's kind of the plan right now. And again, like I talked about, don't worry. That means the first 40 minutes is still baseball. Okay, so don't freak out, everybody. We're not going full football here on the show. Just we covered the schedule release last night, Armando, before we get into some player talk. I'm sure you looked at it and, the hoopla around it. Anything pop with you on that schedule? The holiday games, any of the matchups, Monday Night Football, games in Europe? Anything pop with the schedule release last night? Though, of course, as we knew, they had leaked a whole bunch of stuff before we got the actual schedule.
I mean, everything was leaked right before the schedule was out. There was you have social media nowadays, so that's going to leak everything out. You're going to have this information before it's official. But no, I think we have some fun games. I think we have some good holiday games. I think we're going to have some fun matchups. I think there's going to be some meaningful games down the end, towards the end of the season where, we talk about when we want to start the fantasy playoffs, when we should end the fantasy season. And I think we're going to have a lot of teams here playing towards the end down the stretch, and there's going to be some big and meaningful games there. So I am looking forward to the season as I am every year. And like every year, there's going to be those games that you're looking at, right now. It's May still. You're looking at it, it's like, damn, that is going to be a phenomenal matchup. But once it comes around to October, November, even December, you're like, it's not as good as it was advertised. So, injuries and things change between now and then. So I'm just excited that we have a schedule. Now, again, I talk about this all the time, right? We're solving a puzzle, right? We're putting pieces together, and this is just another piece to the puzzle. We still got many pieces to fill in before the start of the season, before we draft our team, and this is just another piece of that puzzle.
Let's speak directly about some of the players that will be trying to put those pieces together throughout the course of the regular season. I saw something last night, or maybe it was this morning on social media, and I didn't pick this up as we were doing the show on Sirius talking about the schedule. It seems like the Lions don't actually play an outdoor game until week 9, which is crazy pants to me, that they can go half the season without ever seeing the sun. But that matters a lot to Jared Goff, because Jared Goff has got this track record of being good at home and not terrible. It's overblown. He's not terrible on the road, but the numbers aren't as good on the road. Obviously, if weather's not an issue, that should be beneficial to him. The Lions are one of the ascending teams. They're near the top of the mountain in the NFL right now. He got a $212 million massive contract extension. Talk to us about your expectations with Jared Goff. Does anything I just said change your opinion of him, or would it have been the same 3 weeks ago if I'd been talking about Jared Goff?
No, nothing has changed. I think he's deserving of this, right? He's someone that, was traded here. The Rams clearly didn't want him. He's come here and helped this team become a winning franchise. They, making the playoffs. The coaches believe in him. They're putting the right pieces. He was a top 10 quarterback from a fantasy standpoint last season. I think you're looking at a top 10, 12 fantasy quarterback once again. Look at the supporting cast. You have Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have Sam Laporta there, Jameson Williams, Donovan Peoples-Jones. This is a good supporting cast, and we're not even talking about how great this offensive line really is protecting him, right? So you have someone that runs the system and this offense really efficiently. I think we're going to continue to see, Jared Goff be successful. He is volatile at times on the road, like you mentioned. There is those splits. But for me, when you have this supporting cast, when you have, an offensive line that's protecting you, I think Jared Goff can continue to put up decent numbers and solid numbers here. So for me, he's someone I'm going to be targeting, and he's someone that usually goes under the radar, right? Because he's not the sexy name. He doesn't rush. He doesn't provide you with a ton of rushing upside, but he's getting the job done. He's efficient, gives you a safe floor. And if that's what I'm going to get from my quarterback while I'm building a really good supporting cast around that quarterback in my fantasy teams, I'm going to be very happy with those results.
No one is going to, or should be, unless things have gone horribly wrong, planning on starting the Raiders quarterback as their QB1. In a bye week, if there's an injury, okay. Second quarterback, super flex league, okay, fine. They were expected to draft a quarterback, the Raiders, Armando. It didn't happen. All 6 quarterbacks went before them in the first round. They took Brock Bowers. They did bring in Gardner Minshew. The GM is saying it's a quarterback competition. I'm calling BS. Aiden O'Connell's not beating out Gardner Minshew. It's going to be Gardner Minshew. That's my assumption. Tell me if you disagree with that. And what do you think about the passing attack for this Raiders team? I mean, they've got Devontae Adams, which is super sexy. They've got Bowers, who everyone's excited about. Myers really stepped up last year and had a strong season. Talk to us about this passing attack with the Raiders.
Yeah, I personally love this passing attack. I mean, all right, no, I'm sorry. I do not like this passing attack. I agree. I was going to say I agree 100% with you. Sorry. I agree 100% with you, Ray. I think it's going to be Gardner Minshew. I'm not interested here. The only thing we can guarantee here is that Devontae Adams is going to get his fair share of targets, right? And whether it's Minshew, whether it's O'Connell, that's what's going to happen here. For me, I'm staying away from it. I think Gardner Minshew is someone that is exciting in a good matchup. It has a pretty decent ceiling, but the floor is incredibly low. So for me, I'm not going to be investing here. I agree 1,000,000% with you. I think that this is going to be Minshew starting. I think in a super flex or a 2-quarterback league, yes, you could use him as a second quarterback in certain situations. Do I want him as my QB2 for the entirety of the season? Absolutely not, Ray. I think there's just too much volatility when it comes to Minshew, and we've just seen it. He's someone that can fill in, for a couple of weeks, but he just cannot do it for an entire season, at least on a consistent basis. So for me, yes, they have a good supporting cast. You mentioned they added Bowers, they had Mayer, they added Michael Gallup, you have Adams, Myers there. You have pretty decent running backs, Zamir White, Alexander Madison. But for me, it's just a matter of I don't believe in the quarterback, whether it's O'Connell, whether it's Minshew. it's tough to trust this offense passing game when you look at the quarterback situation, right?
Yeah, Armando Marsal of FantasyGuru.com with us right now. Armando, let's talk about the Vikings. This is an interesting one because there is, despite taking J.J. McCarthy, there is complete uncertainty whether McCarthy starts in week 1 or not. They have Sam Darnold who they brought in. We don't necessarily, I mean, I don't think, and tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think I'm J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold's a guy I want to run to play every week either, even if I'm in a 2 QB setup. But there's huge weapons here in the fantasy space. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, T.J. Hawkinson when he's back from his injury, Addison as well. So that's 3 potentially every week starters that don't necessarily have a quarterback we know for week 1 or moving forward. So how is the quarterback position going to play out with this team in your mind? And does Darnold versus McCarthy change your expectations, especially for Justin Jefferson, who's going to go at the top of drafts?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about Justin Jefferson. Obviously, the quarterback situation is not ideal going into the season, right? With the uncertainty, I do think it's going to be. So I think the Vikings are in a good position, right? Because you don't have to rush McCarthy. I like McCarthy a lot. I think he's going to be just fine. I think he's going to be able to run this offense efficiently. But they don't have to rush him in because you have someone like Sam Darnold, who can take on this offense. We've seen in the past, and Carolina started off okay. Then went awful. So for me, I think you're going to see Sam Darnold maybe early on in the season, and then eventually the shift to McCarthy is going to happen. And that, to me, is going to happen if McCarthy can get up to speed before the start of the season. If McCarthy comes out and does well, he could be under center week 1, right? But I think the Vikings are in a good position as far as not having to rush McCarthy in. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Darnold early on and then McCarthy. I do think that maybe for guys like Addison or Hawkinson, it might impact. But someone like Jefferson, I think regardless of who's under center, is going to get his. He's going to create plays. He's just an explosive receiver, one of the best in football. And I don't think that, the quarterback change or the quarterback situation is going to impact him as much as it's going to impact the secondary players, because I still think the volume is going to be there for Justin Jefferson. So for me, I'm still drafting him confidently. I still think Hawkinson is going to be fine. I still think Addison will be fine, but I think maybe their production will be a little bit more inconsistent with the quarterback play, especially if Darnold is under center. I do think McCarthy will eventually be running this offense, and I think he'll be running it okay. I like him a lot. He actually moved up to my top quarterback in the rookie class from this draft class after the landing spot. This is just a phenomenal landing spot for him.
Let's talk about what should be another good landing spot with the Denver Broncos. I don't know if you saw this. Maybe it was just me, but I somehow got onto the running back situation with the Broncos on social media, and there were a gazillion people that pulled out like 14 seconds of Sean Payton saying he liked Jaleel McLaughlin, and they were all saying Jaleel McLaughlin's taking over this backfield this year. And it's like, guys, no. Like, I'm not saying he won't be involved, but he is not touching the ball 20 times a week for the Broncos. Like, come on, let's get real. So talk to us about this backfield, because McLaughlin did show at times last year. Javonte Williams clearly was the guy, but didn't perform as we expected at fantasyguru.com. They added Estime in the draft. They still have got, Sanjay P. Ryan floating around, if I'm not mistaken. The backfield is going to be successful. It was successful last year. It was just divvied up amongst multiple players. Same thing this year. Where are we at with Javonte Williams? Talk to us about this backfield, Armando.
I think it's tough not to expect it, right? Because when you look at the numbers, let's look at it last year. So Javonte Williams, 49% of the snap share. Samaje Perine, 34% of the snap share. McLaughlin, 18% of the snap share. We even had Michael Burton have 18% of the snap share. Opportunities, 275 for Williams, 109 for Perine, 112 for McLaughlin. I think you could see a full-blown committee here again, right? Where we really want Javonte Williams to be that guy. And at the end of the day, he was the primary guy. He accounted for 31% of the team's opportunities last year. So he had a decent workload. Yes, it wasn't what we wanted, but at the end of the day, he was getting those opportunities. I think you're going to see a similar backfield. I really do. I think we're going to see that this year. It's going to be frustrating for fantasy purposes, but I think it's going to work for a team. From an NFL perspective, it's going to work for the Denver Broncos. I like Williams, but this is Sean Payton's clearly not going to give him the workload that he was giving the running backs he was when he was in New Orleans. Maybe he doesn't have that faith in Williams. We also have to account that Williams was returning from an injury, so maybe that played a role into his actual, the touches and his opportunities. So for me, I'm taking the discount price on Williams this year. I still like Williams. I think he's very capable of being efficient here. And if you really look at, the numbers, it was more frustrating earlier in the year. Again, I say this because he came off an injury, so kind of slow. But when you look at weeks 8 through 18, he finished as an RB1 in 4 of, I think, the last 7. No, I'm sorry, 4 of the last 7 or 8 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So he was more efficient, more involved, and just more productive towards the end of the year. So for me, I still think it's going to be a committee, but Williams is someone that I'm okay with taking a discount price on right now in fantasy drafts. Just keep in mind that this is more than likely going to be some form of committee like we saw last year, where he's maybe getting 30 to 40% of the opportunities, and then everyone else is going to be sprinkled in the mix.
We talked earlier about the Lions, Armando Marsal, Ray Flowers here on Fantasy Sports Daily. We talked about Jared Goff. Let's talk about the rushing piece of the Lions offense, which is obviously significant. Last year, David Montgomery had 235 touches and 13 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs had 234 touches and 11 touchdowns. Almost exactly the same. Okay. There are different styles of players that were utilized differently. Gibbs catching passes. He's more dynamic, all these kind of things. But touchdown count, almost exactly the same last year. Seemed to work. Team had a lot of success. There was a report that GM Brad Holmes says that he expects Jahmyr Gibbs' role will grow this year. Now, in theory, Armando, this makes sense. He is a more explosive player than David Montgomery. Totally is. What does this mean, though, for their fantasy outlook? Because Gibbs, I think, was still a running back 1 in a PPR setup last year, even with sharing the backfield. Are they planning to give another almost 500 touches to these 2 running backs? Are they planning on having these guys score 20-plus touchdowns again? And even if that is the case, are we really going to see, Jahmyr Gibbs get 300 touches and see, scaling back up to 175 for David Montgomery? Talk us through this backfield and your thoughts.
The first time I heard if it ain't broke, don't fix it was in a math class of mine. I think it was 8th or 9th grade. And that's the way I view this backfield, right? If it's not broken, why we try to fix it? Look, Montgomery is still going to be the Thunder, and Jahmyr Gibbs is going to still be the Lightning. You mentioned it. They were very similar in opportunities. Montgomery had 243 opportunities last year. Jahmyr Gibbs had 254. Very different opportunities. 72 targets for Gibbs, 24 targets for Montgomery. 182 rush attempts for Gibbs, 219 for Montgomery. Montgomery was their goal line back. He was the one that they were using in the red zone. I think we're going to see a very similar approach. And what this means is there's going to be some big moments for Montgomery and some big moments for Gibbs throughout the season. And there's going to be some lower moments. And that's something that fantasy managers are going to have to just understand and accept when you're drafting these players. Both, in my opinion, are going to be fantasy relevant. They're both going to have a ton of fantasy value. I think they're both going to be assets. They're going to be weekly starters for each and every week. Now, I'm going to say this because we get asked this question a lot, and maybe you could kind of chime in on this as well. This is one of those backfields that I am okay, and I don't do this for many backfields, drafting both and starting both if I have to. But just keep in mind, there's going to be a week where Montgomery goes off and Gibbs just gives you, kind of pedestrian numbers and vice versa. Do you agree with that, Ray? Like, is this one of those backfields that you're okay with, kind of double tapping and going with, or are you preferring just one or the other? Because I don't do this often. I'm not big on this, but this is one of those backfields I'm okay with.
Yeah, I think it's different. I mean, again, 470 touches and 24 touchdowns. Like, this was massive workload. Most of the time, I will say, and we will say, handcuff your running backs. This is not a handcuff situation because they're both part of the offense. This is not 18 touches for one guy, 4 for the other. And boy, if that number 1 guy goes down, this is like you're saying, both these guys are in weekly plays, certainly with the flex edition. I don't like the idea personally of drafting a team. I would not target it, right? I'm not going to sit here, go to my draft and say, I'm going to take Jahmyr Gibbs and then David Montgomery because the cost is just too high. If it fell to me and I'm sitting there and it's Montgomery, or it's like, well, this team, despite the money to Goff and despite the success of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Laporta, they are going to run the ball 35 times a game, right? That's really what they want to do. So, yeah, more yes than no, I guess, Armando. Again, it's not my plan to do this because the cost of Montgomery is so high relative to other running backs that you can get in the 10th round or whatever as handcuffs. But it is an offense that I think, especially down near that goal line, they use the running backs. It's not Aaron Rodgers throwing 2-yard touchdown passes, right? They use the running backs. So, yeah, I think it's fair. And it'll be very interesting. And it's one of those scenarios, piggybacking off what you said, that just because, GM Brad Holmes says that we're going to get him more of a workload, his workload goes up to 270 and Montgomery drops to 210. Like he's not going to take over 75% of the backfield. So be cautious with how you read those news reports, read between the lines, if you will. What about the situation, Armando, with the Bears? The Bears last year were very frustrating for a variety of reasons. One of the main issues they dealt with is there was never a running back. It seemed like there were 4 different guys who had a week. At one point were going to be the lead. They mixed and matched. They're bringing back Khalil Herbert. They're bringing back Rashawn Johnson, but they added DeAndre Swift. The hope, obviously, is that DeAndre Swift is touching it 18 times a week. Is that reasonable? I don't know. You tell us what you think. Is DeAndre Swift going to lead this backfield in touches by a substantial amount? And, the running back coach got all excited the other day and gave an interview talking about how they're going to utilize him in the passing game and all that. Apparently, the Bears are going to throw it 45 times a week because they have 87 guys that are going to catch, 80 passes this year, Armando. What are your thoughts with DeAndre Swift? Is he the lead guy? Is he the clear lead guy? And if that's yes to both those, how excited are you about him for 2024?
Is he the lead guy? Yes, I think he's going to be the lead guy in this backfield. What that means, I think he could have 55% of the opportunities, right? Of the touches, of the rush attempts. Like that could be the lead guy. I think the Bears are in a good position, right? They got a good running back in DeAndre Swift. Someone that can catch passes in the backfield. I know his passing stats weren't great last year, but he was also on an offense where Jalen Hurts throws the football to the running back position at less than 17% of his pass attempts. I haven't added up last year's data, so this is going from the year before, right? Only 16.7% of his pass attempts went to the running back. So not a guy that's going to throw to the running back a lot. Instead of checking it down, he's going to take off. Whether Caleb Williams is going to check it down or not remains to be seen. But like you mentioned, there's a lot of mouths to feed. I still think Swift can have a solid role. I'm expecting, a minimum of 15 opportunities on a week-to-week basis. I think game script is really going to depend on, whether he's going to be heavily involved in the passing game that week or not. But like you mentioned, like DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Odunze, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift. There's a lot of mouths to feed here. It's going to be tough for him. And then when you look at this backfield, they still have Khalil Herbert, like you mentioned. They still have Rashawn Johnson. They're going to be involved as well. This is not going to be an 80% rush attempt or a 90% rush attempt. No, I think, if Swift gets 55 to 60% of the rush attempts and he's also involved in the passing game, I think that's going to be, what fantasy managers should be expecting this year. Any more than that is a bonus, in my opinion.
Final question for you, Armando. Let's combine a couple of wide receivers. Zay Jones signed with the Cardinals. Marquez Valdez-Scantling signed with the Bills. Both guys will have roles with their team. If you had to choose one in a PPR setup, is it easy to say Zay Jones because, MVS is going to catch 2 passes a week? Is MVS going to get a chunk of that Gabe Davis love and, randomly score 7 touchdowns this year? Or how that big week where he goes, 3, 130, and 2 and everyone wins the waiver wire and has to have him? If you had to have one of those two, and I'm not saying you have to have one of those two. If you had to have one of those two, would it be Zay Jones or MVS, and why?
I'm gonna go with Zay Jones. When you look at MVS, he really doesn't. And Zay Jones, is not that he stands out above and beyond everyone else on this team, but when you look at MVS, like they have Claypool, they have Hollins, they drafted Coleman, they have Samuel, Shakir. Does MVS surpass these guys? I think not. When you look at Zay Jones, you have Marvin Harrison Jr., a rookie. You have Michael Wilson, a young receiver. Then for me, it's Zay Jones, right? Like that's kind of how you see it. And he's been successful. He's shown he made some incredible catches last year. He's someone that can be relied on. So and when you look at this, this Cardinals team, I think there's just going to be more opportunities for him. I think this is a team that's going to be passing a lot. A team that's going to be, playing from behind maybe more often than Buffalo. So for me, I think it's going to be Zay Jones. I'd rather invest in him. I've seen more, I don't want to say consistent production, but I've seen more efficiency and more productivity from Zay Jones than I've seen from MVS. Yes, MVS is going to have that 1 week that maybe that 2-second week where he doesn't drop that long pass and catches it, comes down with it and makes a play. But for me, it's going to be Zay Jones, and I don't personally think it's particularly close, right? I think Jones is just the better receiver, and I think his opportunities are going to be there's going to be a clearer path to opportunities for Jones.
Yeah, and everyone remember that week 4 after that 2-touchdown game that MBS has, because it's going to happen at some point. It's going to happen. Armando Marsal joining us today. Thanks for your time, Armando. Give people a sneak peek. What do you got that you're working on behind the scenes for fantasyguru.com here in the next couple days?
Yeah, I'm gonna be recording another podcast. I might be doing an actual best ball live draft. Might record that and put that on. I have basketball content coming out tomorrow. The basketball playoffs are still kicking, so we got that going on. And we have a lot of content coming out. Draft guide is right around the corner, Ray. What is it? So today is May 16th.
2 weeks.
First, draft guide launches. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on. So very excited for the draft guide. It's going to be a good one, as it usually is. Tons of content. And as soon as that June 1st hits, it's not only my daughter's birthday, but it's full go as for football. So it's that time of year where I get super excited because it's a lot of action, a lot of content, and it's just a lot of fun. We love what we do here, so it's a lot of fun, Ray.
Yeah, and Armando's right, but there's a couple of things we hush, we can't talk yet. They're coming. People are going to be really excited about for the football product. So get in it. You can right now over at fantasyguru.com. Get that VIP Platinum package. Again, use that promo code 50 special. You get 50% off everything we do, including all the football work if you want to get involved there. As Armando noted, he's doing basketball still. We'll continue to have him here on the show and kind of give him an opportunity to update his thoughts. And go to fantasyguru.com, click that Elite Plus tab at the top, and you'll find the link for this show, as well as Armando's show, Mind of Marsal. Armando, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again very soon, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on. Everyone have a great day.
You got it. Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. All right, folks, couple of minutes left here before we shut things down, before I go write that cash game breakdown, finish it up. Let's see what we got in the comment section here. Rubby17 says, how many people benched Logan Webb last night? Not this guy. Hopefully no one does. There are some pitchers for me that I don't bench. In my opinion, Logan Webb is in that group. I would not have benched Logan Webb. I think it's different than Javier Assad, who we talked about earlier. But I'm glad, Rubby, that you had him active because a lot of people probably didn't. David P. said, good morning, Rain. How's the voice? It's good. It's strong. I was actually talking to Jeff Manns yesterday before I was on the Elite Sports Show in our pre-show conversation. And it's so fascinating that what a difference it makes for those people that missed it last week. Let's see. So I normally do 3 hours a day of talking. On Wednesdays, I have an extra 3 hours with Jeff. Last week, I had an extra 9 hours of talking. So I talked 29 hours last week, something like that. It's a lot of talking. And almost all of it was solo. I had one show with Ted. So there was a lot of solo work. So I was talking, I think I had 16 hours of talking for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It feels good. It was a little sore there on Thursday night. But I guess I'm a blabbermouth like my lady says. I'm good at talking. Voice is strong, feels good. I think my mind is clearer too. I got a little tired toward the end of the week. So ready to rock and roll here with the cash game breakdown over at fantasyguru.com. with the wagering package over at fantasyguru.com. Don't forget to get that wagering baseball package or the baseball DFS package right now. If you get it, you get all the coverage the rest of the season, which is fantastic. You also get all of Armando and Justin Fensterman's work in basketball the rest of the season, all the NHL coverage the rest of the season, PGA, MMA, racing, and soccer. You get all of that for free if you sign up for the DFS or the wagering piece in baseball over at fantasyguru.com. You can see it right there on the screen. You can also click in the subscribe now tab in the top right corner. Join us. And as Armando said, the football package is only a couple of weeks away from rocking and rolling, and that is going to be something impressive with a special added bonus that we will talk about at the appropriate time. That is what we call in their business a tease. Jason L., by the way, says, cheers, Ray. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Jason, for the kind words. I appreciate it. Kind words from everyone. Appreciate it. Tell a friend about the show Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is Fantasy Sports Daily. Hit me up in Discord over at fantasyguru.com, answering football questions, answering the baseball questions every day, as is the rest of the staff over at the site. I am Ray Flowers. Thanks for joining me today. Be back again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.